When a medical student is deciding to choose a specialty, let's be honest, what's one of the first things they do? They check to see what is the average salary for that particular specialty. And who's at the top? Of course, it's your specialists, your orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, your interventional cardiologists. Who's at the bottom? It's your generalists, your primary care doctors, pediatricians. And who determines that? Well, it's generally the hospital, or probably even more importantly, society determines it. It determines it by the amount of value that particular specialty gives to the hospital or to society. And if you're a physician entrepreneur who's looking to reduce the amount of hours that they make while working on your business, or perhaps you're in private practice and you want to increase the amount of income that you make from that, what can you do? What you can do is increase the value, the perceived value that you have to others. And that's exactly what my next guest did. She's a pain management specialist who is coming off of locums and wanted to design a career that works for her. She wanted to reduce the amount of hours that she had while increasing her hourly rate. She did just that by having the ability to market herself. Just as you would market a business as an entrepreneur, you could also increase the value by having the ability to market yourself. It's a skill that can be used in anything that you do. What was the result? She was able to design her own career, maintaining the autonomy of her own practice, being able to work when she wants and where she wants. By having the ability to show the value that she could provide, she was able to find partners who wanted to work with her, not her chasing them. If you're someone who wants to reduce the amount of hours, design a career that works best for you and your business, you definitely do not want to miss this very important episode. My interview with Dr. Melissa Cady on this episode of Bootstrap MD.
Remember when you could practice medicine on your own terms? What if you could take control of your physician career, make more money while working smarter, not harder? Pick up your copy of The Positioned Physician. Earn more, work smart, and love medicine again. Now updated for 2021, The Positioned Physician details one doctor's journey from burnt-out employee to successful entrepreneur. Whether you are in residency, in mid-career, or close to retirement, after reading The Positioned Physician, you'll gain the knowledge that can strategically impact your doctor life. The Positioned Physician, now available on Amazon Kindle and paperback.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Michael Meng. Welcome to another edition of Bootstrap MD. As you know, I love to spotlight physician entrepreneurs. And I'm seeing a trend with many of us. And oftentimes we have an independent streak. We're often someone who is kind of in a square peg in a round hole. And I think it might encapsulate, I'm not sure, but it might encapsulate my next guest. Dr. Melissa Cady, also known as the Challenge Doctor, is a board-certified anesthesiologist and pain management specialist. She's the author of the book Paindemic, a practical and holistic look at chronic pain, the medical system, and the anti-pain lifestyle. She's co-host of the Change Physician podcast with Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, who I recently had the opportunity to be interviewed with, and we recently had him on a podcast. And the Change Physician, the podcast you guys need to check out, is where you can learn the mindset, skills, and strategies to create the life you want without selling out your morals or values. And I needed to have her on the program. So Dr. Cady, thank you for joining me on the Bootstrap MD podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and thank you for all you're doing to inspire and guide other physicians as well.
So I was able to interview your partner in crime, or your co-host.
My PIC.
That's right. Yes. I know you're married, but you also got your podcast partner.
I got my business, married partner.
That's right. And when you interviewed me, I definitely getting to know each other. You kind of had an independent streak. I could with the questions that you're asking, and I just thought it was so unique. So I wanted to learn more about your background, and that's why I wanted to have you on the program. But am I hearing that correctly, or did you know since elementary school you wanted to become a doctor?
First of all, that I guess this whole round peg and the square, or square peg and a round hole, has eluded me, because I think I've always felt that sense of not quite fitting the traditional, or I've not been one to want to, even for a lot of organizations, even in college, I felt like I didn't want to conform in this way where it didn't allow this ability to think, and maybe look at things a little differently. And no, I've never really wanted to be a physician since I was a child. There are a few physicians in my family, like my uncles, but I may have thought, I've talked about being a veterinarian, but I think there was a lot of influence from maybe perception of what was a noble field and what was something that would enable some stability of income. And I love to learn. I think that's the one thing that I realized. I love to learn, and I like to think differently. So because of that, I think that creates this sense of, I don't want people to tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it. But the problem is you have to go within that infrastructure in order to create this opportunity to be a physician. So when you are on this treadmill, and I'll just keep going and give you some ideas of my perspective there. Please stop me if I go too far.
That was great.
Yeah. So I feel like I've been on this treadmill where you just kind of hop on and do what you're supposed to do in order to achieve. And I think I've had a sense of, I think my pursuits have been directly related to a feeling of just feeling good about myself, and filling voids, like the sense of accomplishing. And is that part of trying to please others, whether it's family or friends? Probably to a certain extent, because I don't think I really really dove into that true personal development type of just that pursuit of personal development. I don't think I was ready for it in my teens, my 20s. I mean, I was always learning, but academics is a little different than like relationship learning and and life learning. And so I think it really took time for me to kind of grow into myself and realize some of these insights that maybe I felt, but I could never put into words, because I don't think I had the emotional intelligence to really appreciate that back then. And and it's still a journey. I'm still evolving, but I think there's this feeling that, and it's really created issues, and I think it might be relevant for people to hear, is that I have had a problem. I've kind of gone against the grain in some ways in where I worked, because of the system that we work within. So just to give you an idea, I've worked in anesthesia for, oh gosh, I finished my pain fellowship in 2009, and then I worked part-time in anesthesia because I had a hard time conforming to the traditional pain medicine practices, because it didn't feel right. I've dealt with my own pain. I know there's a lot more that goes into it from the patient perspective. There's a lot you need to do, a lot you need to understand, a lot of things you need to appreciate to really, really be on that journey of healing and less pain. And I call it the anti-pain lifestyle, just as a general term of just, you're never going to have a pain-free life. In order to really achieve and improve pain or improve a state of anxiety or you've really got to learn to there's these challenges you're just going to have to deal with, and it takes a certain level. I've gone on a tangent, and I just went on a tangent. I'm not sure where I'm going now, but in essence, all of these challenges and struggles, it requires a certain level of personal development to really improve. And so when I dealt with pain, let me come back to my tangent here. When I dealt with pain, and I dealt with, going into this medical profession, who is very much driven by, this unfortunately money. And a lot of people are in it for the right reasons. It's just, unfortunately, the system is designed to give you more money for doing the things that probably you don't need to be doing to patients. And maybe we need to do more education and helping people learn how to live healthier lives and deal with stress and deal with these challenges of stress, anxiety, pain, all these things that we're trying to fill a void or we're struggling with. And it could be just the environment we were born into or that we've chosen. And the medical system is no different. So I've, struggled, and I know a lot of us as physicians have gone through this medical system realizing things should be better. And it's stressful. It doesn't enhance the wellness of physicians. And unfortunately, I feel like if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't take care of each other, hence why the podcast came about, if we don't do these things, for each other, then it's hard to take care of patients. So it's almost like victims taking care of victims. And so the whole system, I think, comes crumbling down. And you look at the pandemic. Of course, I'm kind of putting a date on this interview here, but and I never even, obviously, I didn't have a crystal ball to know that my pandemic trademark on my book would actually come to be there's actually a pandemic around the corner, but those things are real, some of these challenges we have in our system. And so when you get into a system and you're working in it like I did with anesthesia, and then you no longer, when I first got out of my training, I was like kind of like locums, then I was part-time, and then I decided to become employed, which for me, and it's not for necessarily everybody, that was a big mistake, I think, on my part, because when you become employed, from a financial standpoint, is beneficial. You got benefits and all this other stuff, but it put kind of this constriction on me, and I know I've come to know myself and realize that I can't have that kind of binding around me. Like I need to feel the freedom, I need to feel the autonomy, and once you sign that contract and you're expected to do what you need to do, and you make a salary, and yet your hours increase or you need to cover more call, you're actually working less when it comes to an hourly basis. So you're giving up more time in some cases. And sometimes it can work out great for people. But for me, I want the freedom. It doesn't mean I work less. And I think you probably can agree that sometimes when you're independent, you find work. As physicians, I'll speak for my personality, work is our sanity. Like in some ways, it's created a structure for so many years in the way we're trained, and that we don't know what else to fill our time with other than more work, because that's been we've been kind of like brainwashed in a way to be the kind of people that will take more work and do more work and do it for the good, or the better of people, and just for the good of society. And so I have a lot of biases. Of course, I'm a female. I've gone through the medical system, and all these things influence me and how I perceive the world. But I see, in my perspective, is that when you are trained as a physician, you have to work really hard. You have to sacrifice a lot. We're used to sacrificing. Our view is that we want to know things to help people. We feel like we have to have the answers all the time. And sometimes part of being a great physician isn't necessarily your answers, it's being present and being part of the journey with patients. And the way that we are, the infrastructure and how we get paid is for, doing things to people. And, I'm reading a book right now by Vivek Murthy about together and isolation and loneliness, and such a big part of our health and our wellness. And I think it also applies to how our interactions are with patients now. We're not, and I'm not talking about emergency situations, but, these continuity of care type things, we need to be present. So, I kind of went on multiple routes here.
This is great. We're done now. No.
You're what? I missed it. What'd you say?
No, that's all the time we have left now. But
well, there you go. That's
it's fascinating because there's so many directions that we can take this conversation. But when did you feel that this way. I know, I talked a little bit about it. You actually were a personal trainer
Hmm.
or are a personal trainer. And then that would kind of led you into medicine, correct?
So it's kind of been, it was kind of an evolution from that. I loved musculoskeletal medicine. I had played sports. I had this fascination with the human body. It's just kind of a natural inclination to be a personal trainer. But then I was feeling uncomfortable when I had patients that had like heart problems and, you know,
Mhm.
back problems. And I just felt like I need to know more. And,
Right.
it's just like you have so much energy, in your 20s and you're just so driven. Many times that's where our biggest drives start. And so I felt like, why not? I'll just try. And so I got into medical school and because of
So,
my
so you
love
went.
for them. Go ahead.
So you went into medical school. Again, pain. You've had, sounds like you've had some pain, personal pain
Mhm.
issues as well, which led to that. When did this disillusionment of becoming an employed physician start? I know where it started for me. It was pretty in residency where I kind of learned, but I signed on for about 5 years. What was it for yourself?
I think I just, was drinking the Kool-Aid throughout the whole training thing. I think that year of pain fellowship and this feeling that what I want to do for patients would not allow me to make the profits because just the way that the
Right.
incentives are, put together. um, I felt like I felt this nauseating feeling like I couldn't join a practice. I'd have to do it on my own, but that I probably couldn't afford the overhead and the way that I would spend time with patients. I would see half the number that my colleagues, my fellowship would see, and they were fine with it. But I was willing to take on some of the most, you know, challenging patients or just frustrating ones, and I enjoyed it. But I think that's when it first started, and then I just had the freedom and the income after that at part time. And I literally started, and I think this is unusual. Talking about the square peg in a round hole, another really unusual thing about me is I decided this is the number I need to make per month in order to live, and as long as I make that amount, I'm fine. So I'd work 2 to 3 days a week right out of the gates,
Hmm.
because my perception is I can always work more, but I
Right.
don't want my state or my standard of living to be so high that it's stressful to come down if I need to. So I did have that around that time. And I literally told myself I need to make 10,000 a month for me to be happy. That was kind of like my number. And I still feel like that, you know?
And it's so simple. And what I tell other physicians is, okay, you graduated medical school, you know what your average salary is, or your hourly rate, you have an idea what that's going to be. But so many doctors feel like they need to meet the average, right? Because we all see these average amount of salaries, anesthesiologists, cardiologists, pediatricians way below, primary care, it's a little bit above that. We kind of need to know what the averages, and they come out with this every year. In your in the West, in the South, we all
Mm-hmm.
know what our kind of averages is, and for whatever reason, they feel that, well, I need to meet that, even if I'm working 50 plus hours, even if I'm doing 30 plus hours. But you can, it comes down to just this independence. Is you went into locums and just like, I can always get that back. I can always work more if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Why do you think more doctors don't think similar to that? Because I see so many that's just trying to catch up, you know.
Yeah. I think obviously like most things in humankind is it's complex, but I think there's, first of all, there's the golden handcuffs of I've got 100 to $300,000 in debt.
Right.
So they feel like
Sure.
they got to get that paid off right now. I think sometimes it's hard for us to realize and that you're not guaranteed tomorrow, and sometimes people overwork on the front end thinking they can just push and get this all done, make tons of money, and retire early. There's attitudes of, they want something secure, so they get the job, which requires them work full time, and I don't think that the medical system creates the options in a way that makes it normal. to maybe not work full time. I think we're also to blame as physicians and I've been the subject of this too, is that sometimes people look down on you for working part time as if you're not putting as much effort. And, here's the little light bulb that should be going on. Oh, she's making less money than me.
Right.
So that there's a sacrifice that's being made in a different way. And so I think as clinicians or physicians, we should embrace and support people that want to design their life. I think need to be better at designing our life versus just getting on the treadmill that we started on from the very first day of medical school. I think or pre-med for that matter. I think we're so used to being followers. And I think you said that in one of our interviews, that many physicians don't tend to be the typical leaders, where they're willing to construct or create the life they want. And granted, there might be people who are perfectly happy with, the job and the full time, and there's no question to them and they're happy. But, through some of our interviews on our podcast, it's interesting to hear from, one of, I think it's Dr. Aaron Wiseman, and made a really good comment that sometimes, for like men versus women are the ones, unfortunately, we're the only ones that can really like bear children if we're going to have children. So there's a little different kind of stress there, but the system has really kind of been designed for men, because that's kind of what it started out that way. So, it kind of depends. I guess what I'm getting to is it depends on your expectations. What, if you're going to be happy with that or not. And to answer your question directly, why are people less likely to be more entrepreneurial? I guess I think it's just because we're brainwashed to just be followers. And by the nature, we have to follow the rules. We tend to be conservative and how we don't want to, we're worried about a reputation.
Right.
There's everything we're worried about. Like, it's all about following the guidelines. And even if you look at when we have to answer these things, if we've had any medical, psychiatric things, there's been a push by several physicians to work on that too. Like, we're shaming a lot of physicians in ways like, if you just had a bout of depression, you just lost your wife and you've been in depression for a year, like, you don't want to share that. Like, you don't even want to go get seen. Like, we can't even work on our own wellness because of the nature of the system. But I think a lot of people out there I think we're just brainwashed into just being employees, and we've lost autonomy.
Well, and two, and this will probably get me in trouble, so I might have to edit this later. I mean, I've worked with the medical board. I've done some things with the medical board.
Yeah.
And we get this quarterly newsletter that gives us a list of all the doctors who did not follow, right? Didn't follow everything. And of course, there's some who definitely should be practicing medicine.
Yeah.
But then you've got people who, like, here's a name because they didn't turn in their license on time, or they had some tax issues, or maybe had a DUI, but it's all listed. It's all listed here, and it just shows you, like, okay, here are the doctors that aren't following the system. And granted, many of them are reasons why they should be, but it's this public embarrassment.
Yes. Shaming again.
The shaming about that. So tell me about your practice now. I know you're working part-time. Tell me how you kind of set it up and the other businesses that you run.
So right now I do so it's been kind of fun, to be honest. I left the group of an anesthesia group after about 9 years in September of 2019, and then did locums. And then, of course, a few months with the pandemic, I couldn't do any elective cases that I thought I'd be starting in May or a little earlier than that. So as of June this year, I started working directly with two plastic surgeons that I worked with when I was with the prior group. They came to me directly and asked me to do their cases. This is, plastic surgery, mainly elective, mainly cash-based anesthesia. So I've really embraced it. And the reason I think it kind of ties into things we're talking about is having the autonomy to create the experience for patients that I feel like they deserve and should be in place. So this has taken a little bit of time for me to create this, but essentially I have the plastic surgery office will let me know, hey, we need you to cover this case. Okay. I get the phone number, I text the patient, I said, I'd love to do a pre-op Zoom online preoperative assessment with you and talk about all your questions, do that ahead of time so it's not done the day of surgery. So I send them that. I send them a link. They can schedule themselves. I see them on that particular day for our preoperative chat. I call it an anesthesia chat. And then after I talk to them, if they're not insurance, which most of them aren't, I will get permission to send to their email an invoice to prepay for their anesthesia experience, which is all inclusive, whether the surgeon goes longer than the estimated time or not. And then I see them the day of, and literally it's a pop in for a minute or two, just say, hey, did you have any questions since we chatted last time? Make sure vital signs are good and hadn't eaten. And then I give them the IV margarita and we go back to the operating room. And after that, I end up getting, I give them a card with that same phone number I've texted from. If they have any questions about their anesthesia experience, they can directly contact me. And then after about a week later, I send them something in the mail and I ask, actually the text message I send several days later by the end of the week, see if there's any issues, if they had any questions. If they don't, please fill out this survey. So I get feedback directly by text, which is documented instead of just on the phone. So it's actually there printed. And then they fill out a survey that's, I put it up anonymous for testimonials later if I want to. And I specify that. And then I send them something in the mail, a little gift. And I have this whole experience that is just unheard of. And I absolutely love doing that. And so I'm keeping track of all the, feedback, and potentially even the surgeon thinks that we should present it at a conference. But it is by far the amount of feedback and the kind of feedback I get back just goes to show you we're not delivering on value. Not that everyone has to be happy. I don't believe that every patient has to be happy, because what makes them happy may not be good for their health. Right. So, that's different. But that is my part-time practice right now with 2 plastic surgeons. That volume might change because one surgeon's going to be going off to do in a separate location.
And what compelled the physicians, the surgeons, to reach out to you?
I am very particular about, not every anesthesia provider is the same. There's a lot of great anesthesia providers.
Right. I
just happen to be the kind of person that wants more. I want to dive in a little more details about them. I might spend a few more minutes on the pre-op. They've heard me when I worked with the other group. They've heard me and how I, just from a professional standpoint and consistency and wanting to know how they did afterwards. Like there's a lot of care and detail that is unique to me, but there's a lot of people that care, but the way that they do it, it might be different. And he knows that I'm an entrepreneur and that this would be something probably up my alley. And he felt like his patients do well when I take care of them. So I don't, that's my guess. I mean, otherwise he wouldn't be coming to me. Is my assumption.
I really think it hits the nail on the head, because we got so many physicians who are complaining about so much, and rightly so, declining reimbursements. I'm seeing my salaries going down. But when you're able to do really, really well at whatever specialty you're at, which you obviously do, they're coming to you. Because I don't know, if that movie, Liam Neeson from Taken, he has this particular set of skills. You heard that phrase, right? Because he's the best one, and that's why he charges so much money. I'm equating a physician to a hired killer, but if you get my point, the way that you can increase your value is increase the amount of benefit that you can provide. And that's why they come to you. You're not going to them. And if you're a physician that's struggling right now and you feel like you're just a number, it's because that's how they're treated. That's how they perceive you. And we know that's not true. But a part of being a physician, and I don't know if your book may be playing a role into it, but did that help you in terms of marketing yourself? We don't like to think of ourselves as marketing ourselves, but did that help? Did that get you noticed more than other?
Well, the one of the 2 surgeons that actually pursued me and even discussed with my prior group, like we really want her to do the cases. He knows that I wrote a book. He came to my book signing. I think he was quite, he understands what it's like he has his own practice, and he knows the struggles of building your own practice. Now, I have the benefit, and you talk about all these salaries in the country. This sounds totally off topic, but not necessarily, but I don't have to worry about an overhead. So like a surgeon, imagine a plastic surgeon, he has a huge overhead and he has to manage staff. I don't have to do that other than, communicating with people in the surgery center that I work at and I worked at before for many years. There's something to say about, I guess, once you're kind of that mindset, you kind of understand that this other person has that similar mindset. And the book, I think, just created evidence that I have that tenacity and I still need to write the second edition, which I need to get that tenacity back. But I think it just added to this perception of my drive to create a better experience. And I'm very committed to educating. I feel very, very strongly that people should be better informed. And I do recognize some people get super anxious, so too much detail. And I try to monitor that and present it in a way that they can tolerate. But there is a certain minimum I expect them to hear as an adult consenting to any type of elective procedure.
Again, what's interesting too is in my audience, got a lot of entrepreneurs and doctors who are entrepreneurs, as I jokingly refer to them as, they want to do that. But if you're still passionate about medicine, which I can tell you sure are, like myself, is just want to be the best at that. Just be the best and make yourself where they come to you. You don't necessarily have to come to them, because that's when you can, and again, money's not the end all, but you write your own check. You can decide how you want to work.
Right.
Because that really kind of improves your standing. I have a friend who's a weight loss doctor, and as primary care, we deal with weight loss for like a minute. Yeah, but he charges like 5 to 10 times higher than the average other doctor dealing with weight loss. One, he's got a book. He's had a special on PBS. So he charges thousands of dollars. I'm not saying that's not what you have to do to charge that, but it brands him better. Is he the best doctor dealing with weight loss? He would probably tell you not. There's some universal things about eating less, moving more, but because the perception is he's able to brand himself and he enjoys what he does. So even if you're someone who said, I don't like doing this, but there's a part in medicine that you do like. Maybe you love to create podcasts. Why not be the best podcaster that you can be? But it helps those who are not ready to make that leap to becoming their own boss, and say, hey, maybe it's just the branding and marketing. And I know Kevin loves to talk about marketing.
Oh yeah.
The call went on for like 2 hours. We couldn't get end it, but I love that you illustrated that point. And then looking back, it's like, geez, you don't have to kind of follow those average salaries. That's why NBA players, why did they get millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars, right? Because they're the best at that particular skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for illustrating and just showing evidence that is true. So you have that, and what are the other your businesses that you work on?
Sure. Well, I'm in a stopping kind of in a pause on my Pain Out Loud website. It's still there. I've got an app associated with it. I actually use a small New Zealand company that was a startup at the time that helped kind of bridge an app with my website. So I have a lot of interviews with pain professionals and people I call them pain challengers and pain professionals, and just gives their stories. And so there are video interviews that are on the website and can be seen in the app as well. At least for now, I'm just debating whether or not to continue the app based on utilization. And I've found that it's the one thing about pain, people don't necessarily think they need an education on it because they experience it and they think they know it and understand it. And as Dr. Kevin Kikaro, who was an interventional pain physician in the past, who's now he considers himself a pain specialist, We both stopped doing interventions for pain because they're really not necessary most of the time, and nearly most of the time they're not. And so we have a very strong belief there. So my venture into that was several years ago, was starting to just share stories to help people realize there's better ways of understanding pain and dealing with it, and to minimize injections, medications, and surgeries. Not to say I'm completely against those, but people need to have the basis of understanding before they choose to take on a risk that may not be necessary. And so I think going in eyes wide open was my goal. And the tagline was healing stories matter. And so sometimes people need proof that there are other ways of doing it versus learning the hard way, which is what most people in this society in the United States that are pursuing pain interventions are doing. They're just like, let's try this and this, and just, possible complications, and learning the hard way. So that's one of my ventures that I'm trying to decide how I want to take that, or if I'm going to consider it more of an archived effort. I definitely am not going to get rid of all the interviews. I think they're helpful, but sometimes we need to curate the information in a way that's very guided. And so that's something that I might develop over time. Of course, a podcast is something that has been a lot of fun for, Kevin and I to do, because we just had this joint vision of doing something that was meaningful. And of course, it's a lot of fun to interview people to hear their stories.
He needs to move the background of his fireplace, though.
Yes, he needs a different background. It's all Zoom background, so it's not really like a true fireplace. Yeah, he needs to pick something different. I should talk to him about that.
You didn't hear from me.
What's that?
You didn't hear it from me.
I don't know. Well, I need to bring it up because I like giving him a hard time, and let's see, what else do I have? There's something I can't really talk about right now. That's kind of a startup that I might be involved in, but it will be more on a telemedicine type of venture, where I can use some of my pain background and my physician standing to help people. And this could be a position that I could work. I love to go to Australia and New Zealand quite frequently. That, yeah. So if I'm off-site here, then I could enjoy, still be making some income doing that. But some of my other little entrepreneurial things are, real estate and, working on a couple other book ideas. But those are kind of my big things.
Having fun.
What's that?
You're having fun doing it.
That's right. Yeah, I think this is the thing that I think makes a lot of people happy. It's not just me, but having the opportunity for creativity with autonomy, and not doing too much of the stuff you love, like in the medical field where it has its own stressors, because I need a break from that. As much as I love it, I don't want to do it full time. So I want the flexibility, the autonomy, the creativity to design the life that suits me. And so for everyone else, it's different. I don't have children. So, some people, they need to surround themselves with their children. That will take up their time too. So
you have a cat. You got a cat.
I have a cat and 2 rabbits.
And 2 rabbits, yes.
They're all rescues, if you're curious out there. Don't ask. But they're low maintenance, put it that way.
But what's great is just like I had one client of mine. He said, Mike, you get these opportunities, and I can't get these same opportunities because, you're out there a bit, and anybody can get these opportunities. Anybody can. Would you agree? You just have to, I guess, have your eyes open on there and be willing to put yourself out there, which, be honest, as someone who's introverted, it's difficult to do this, sometimes, but I think the benefits outweighs the rewards. Because, I mean, do you agree in terms of that there are opportunities that are out there?
Sure. Well, that's the mentality. I think this applies to many areas in life, and sometimes you can't just find it. You have to create an experience that either someone else has put out there for you to go experience, or you create your own like podcast experience, and which forces you to connect. And when you start connecting, it's those connections that open your eyes and your ears to opportunities you would never even thought of, because we're in your little world that is I don't want to say just brainwashed, but they have a certain mentality of what, and if you're focused on just surviving and you're stressed out and you're not getting enough sleep and you feel isolated despite being around tons of people who are burned out as well and just want to go home, and may affect the quality of patient care. I mean, you can go on tangents on all this and how it has these multiple effects. But yes, I think that you have to, there is without a doubt, if I had not put myself out there with, and sometimes it's about thinking about what's, if you think about trying to help somebody else, whether it's a society or it's an individual, if you just start going out there and trying to do something good for people, people will notice, people will acknowledge it, they'll appreciate it, they might connect you with somebody else, then they start recognizing your value, and then they share you with somebody else. And that's like the ultimate marketing, is that people, they might have an impression about you that might not be completely accurate. But if you don't put out your value, or you don't put out the good things you want to do in this world, then people won't be able to see it and won't be able to share it. And so I think, you just kind of had this, you just brought up some ideas that I really haven't even said in words, but you have to engage in an experience with people. So whether it's somebody else has created it or something you're deciding you want to do because it just sounds cool, or you want to try it, or you want to learn, the Paradox podcast, he does it because he wanted to learn more about some topic. And so he just put it out there for the world to hear too. So find something that helps other people, maybe selfishly helps you too. And it's amazing how you can start connecting with people, and opportunities. Many times the opportunities are all around us, but we're not engaged with the right people in order to see them. And I don't mean just social media and stuff, because they're going to start targeting you with certain stuff, but really engage with real relationships with people. And it's kind of cool to, connect with people you didn't think you'd connect so quickly with, or maybe learn something from them. I mean, that's how wealthy people, and I mean, you have to have your networks of people.
Right. And I mean, it sounds woo woo, and I know you're from Austin, and that,
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. My Austin friends, I love you. But it is, I've always been the belief, you just put something out there, out into the universe, whatever you want to call it, something always comes in. And I think the other thing that they mentioned too is that drive is a curiosity factor. You can't fake that.
No.
I mean, I do it because I just like to hear interesting perspectives. And that's how we learn. And as you mentioned, you're not at your journey. We're just still kind of riding along. We don't have all of the answers. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if you told me that, the country was going to shut down for, all of 2020, I would say, what are you smoking there? In But it happens. And it's just the way we're able to connect, and we all have a love-hate relationship with social media. We know the trolls and the bad things that can happen, and that, but there's also opportunities to meet people we've never met face to face, but we can have these conversations over these Zooms. It's not 100% replaceable, but it's allowed us to bring us closer together in some weird fashion. But there's so much great stuff. I'm gonna need to have you come back. And I love the way that the way that you think and see these things. Where can our audience go to learn more about what you do? Just give some links that you want to share with us today.
Sure. I think the easiest thing is just go to challengedoctor.com. You can put my name in, melissacady.com, but everyone misspells it. So it's better to just go to Challenge Doctor.
You're not a golf assistant, a golfer. You're not a caddy.
I'm not a golf caddy. Yes, Cady like lady, but with a C. Sounds like a first name, but yeah, go to challengedoctor.com. I'm, Instagram, I'm trying to get a little bit busier on that. Of course, I got a couple Instagram pages because I got the podcast, and I manage all of my own stuff. And at some point down the road, I might have someone else do it, but I'm kind of that control freak.
That's one big thing about being a father is I get,
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Feel free to, follow me. Challenge Doctor is pretty much my hashtag on any of the social media outlets.
Wonderful. Melissa, it was wonderful. I love how you put things into perspective and just kind of the way you think. And for those listening, I hope you were inspired as much as I do every time I hear her talk. And as always, guys, keep moving forward.